What's going on, you guys? It's your Huggable Hipster here, and welcome back to Soulsborne Academy. Don't mind the hunter in the corner, they're just here for your protection. In today's video, we're going to be going over some lore and theory crafting on the character Bayle in Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree. I have a theory that could possibly represent what the character Bayle is and how it's utilized within the DLC of Elden Ring. So I'm going to tell you my theory first, and then we are going to be diving into some of Bayle's lore and some of what backs my theory up. Now, my theory is that Bayle is a representation of greed and this kind of gluttonous nature within Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree. I was trying to come up with a good lore and theory video for Bayle because I thought there's too much there. I mean, you have the flowers on the ground, which we'll get into in a little bit. Bayle the Dread is by far, I found out, one of the most hated dragons in all of Elden Ring. He fled to the land of shadow after a massive face-off with Dragon Lord Placidusax. Also, shout out to the Reddit user that found this, Matrix_030. You can see two of Placidusax's heads chomping on Bayle's neck. So if we were to have seen the entire boss of Placidusax, it would have been 4 heads and 2 sets of wings. Love that for him. There was this giant crater that was made when Bayle crashed down into that area of the Land of the Shadow. So when we see the boss, we see greed, we see hunger, we see resentment, we see this vile nature that made every dragon and every just person's life absolute hell and jagged peak. There's even an ancient dragon, Senisax, that you actually fight on the way to Bayle, and it could be possibly a descendant of Placidusax. I'm not too sure on that, because it has all the same movesets as Placidusax. It's just like, you know, a mini, less angry version of Placidusax. After you beat Bayle, if you go back over to the Dragon Communion at right where the priestess was, her heart is there and her weapons and all that fun stuff is there for you guys to obtain. I find it interesting that everyone who is there absolutely hated Bayle. Vile, absolutely awful dragon, and all of the dragons there worship Placidusax. That is their dragon lord. Now, dragons as a motif for greed actually pop up during the time of Beowulf. I mean, we can even find the earliest examples of what dragons represent in Beowulf. Now, it states here that the dragon in Beowulf is the earliest example of a traditional European dragon, and according to the narrator, inhabits a hoard in the earth, where old winters he guards heathen gold, and does him not a bit the better. Hoard is an archaeological term for a deposit of valuable objects, sometimes intentionally buried and often originally belonging to a wealthy individual. Dragons being possessive over their hoards of treasure may reflect greed, but could also be seen as a very real analogy for the early English kings, princes, and other elite members of society who were buried with their own hoards of treasure. This is what makes me feel more solidified in my theory, to be quite honest. Dragons are, in a sense, associated with kind of this selfish nature, if you will. Now, this isn't the first time that we have seen a dragon that is completely egotistical, completely bent on just satiating their own will for power. Where have we seen this before? I know where. Dark Souls 1, Seath the Scaleless. I know some of you don't like the fact that I compare Dark Souls 1 to Elden Ring, but here we go. But Seath betrayed the ancient dragons in support of Lord Gwyn and just the knowledge that he obtained through all of the research that he did. Just imagine those little dragon hands just grabbing onto books. So cute. Now, later, when Seath became basically the son-in-law of the king, he was made duke and he was given a fragment of the Great Soul. Now, one thing that's really crucial and important to keep in mind here is that Seath the Scaleless is a descendant of the primordial archdragons who inhabited the world before the First Flame. Now, with that in mind, my biggest question is Bayle the Dread older than Seath the Scaleless, or is Seath the Scaleless older than Bayle the Dread? I wonder which way it is, because if Seath the Scaleless is a descendant of the primordial archdragons, were the primordial archdragons Placidusax and Bayle, since they are some of the 2 oldest dragons in the lore of what Elden Ring is? That's something I need to mull over, and it's something I need to talk to other Souls creators, about other community members, because it gets to this gray area of where who came, what came first, the chicken or the egg kind of thing, Now, something else to note about the boss arena as well of Bayle the Dread are these flowers that inhabit it. This is the dragon's Calibloom, and its description states that it's a flower with an uncanny shape coursing with hot blood, material used for crafting items, exceedingly rare to find. A single flower is said to blossom only once from the hearts of the dead warriors who oft partook of the dragon communion. And what's really interesting is that this flower actually exists in real life. Now, it wasn't just in World War I that corn poppies were seen around dead bodies. It goes all the way back to Genghis Khan. Now, this is a quote actually from a Reddit user that I found that was very helpful and useful. Asamaya, I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly. Poppies are considered flowers that mostly grow where everything else around them has died, aka the disturbed earth. Their seeds are able to survive for years without growing. In the war, the ground got all churned up, other plant life died, and the poppies started blooming. Now, whether this is because of the sulfur in the mustard gas that was being used or whatever the cause was, it was actually kind of this beautiful reminder that death, while death is happening, there is life that is growing at the same time, which you also see, by the way, with a lot of flowers. The corn poppy flower and the Titan arum or the corpse flower aren't the only ones that do this. We also have the ghost flower, which is a fungus that grows from different trees and everything in very moist conditions. So that's another one. It grows from literally dead things. I find that absolutely fascinating as well. But this is just, another thing that George R.R. Martin and Miyazaki added to their story to make it feel more immersive. Now, what I found fascinating was the description of the Talisman of Dread, which you can find in the Jagged Peak. Bayle was the foul dragon's name, a terrible harbinger of destruction, whose challenge to the ancient Dragon Lord Placidusax, ended in grievous mutual injury, with two heads clamping down on Bayle and the loss of Bayle's wings. And you also have Placidusax, who lost two of his heads, two of his wings, and part of his tail. Oh joy. So we literally have two dragons that were bashing at one another, all because of their greed and what power they wanted and what control they wanted. Was Placidusax and Bayle again here before Seath? Was Seath here before Placidusax and Bayle? We may never know. One thing I do know is that dragons in Elden Ring and the entire Souls and Souls-like franchise in the From Software games are incredibly crucial to the story of these games. I would say dragons are probably the most important part of the story, and they are what guide the story of what Elden Ring is and what Dark Souls games are. It's not just about humanity. It's not just about the way in which the Tarnished or whichever character you are playing at the time in Dark Souls is going through and navigating through the story. It's about understanding greed. It's about understanding manipulation within these games and understanding that the dragons are being utilized to carry that motif, to carry what that symbolism is. But you guys, that is it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you guys like my face and what I do, please be sure to subscribe and hit that bell down below. May you find your worth in the waking world, dear hunter. Stay casually dirty, and I will see you all in the next video. Umbasa.